Hey, welcome back, biologists. So we are talking about two very important things in this lecture video as we are continuing our discussion of the cardiovascular system. One is what is actually in blood. All this that we've talked about, blood transport, we're going to talk about what's actually in it. And then we're going to talk about cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease is a leading cause of death in Tennessee, here where we live. So it's very medically relevant probably to all of us. We probably know someone who's been affected by this. So those are the two things we're discussing in this video. Okay, in a vertebrate, blood is considered a kind of connective tissue. It's kind of different to think of blood as a tissue because it is a liquid, but it is a kind of tissue. And in this tissue, we have different kinds of cells. So here we're going to talk about leukocytes, platelets, and erythrocytes. And these different cells are suspended in a liquid matrix, and this liquid is called plasma. If you were to centrifuge a vial of blood, so someone's come and donated blood, or maybe they're getting tested for something, if you were to centrifuge it, the cells would fall to the bottom, and the plasma would be at the top. And plasma is a little more than half of the volume of blood. It contains water. Water is a solvent that everything is being dissolved in. It also contains different dissolved ions, things like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium chloride, bicarbonate. These are things that are being transported through the blood. They are providing osmotic balance. They are buffering the pH, especially bicarbonates buffering the pH. They're helping take care of membranes. So these are being carried through the blood. We have proteins, things like albumin, which is a blood plasma protein that helps with osmotic balance. Antibodies which help fight off infection. Apolipoproteins, which take lipids through the blood. Lipids are not easily dissolved in water, so those proteins allow the lipids to transport. And then fibrinogen, which is involved in clotting blood. And there are also other substances that are being transported. Nutrients, things like glucose, fatty acids, vitamins, nutrients that need to get to body cells are being transported through blood to the body cells. Waste that have been picked up from cells being picked back up so they can be taken out of the body. Gases, things like carbon dioxide and oxygen, very important that we're transporting those through blood. And hormones. Next are erythrocytes. Erythrocytes are called red blood cells. So in this tube, our red blood cells have come to the bottom of the tube. That's the red part. They're why blood looks red. Erythrocytes' main job is to transport oxygen and carbon dioxide. They're taking oxygen to the cells and picking up carbon dioxide, which is a waste product. One interesting thing about red blood cells is they are anucleate when they are mature. That means they have gotten rid of their nuclei. So we are constantly forming new red blood cells. They live for about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. And when they get rid of that nuclei, that means they have more room within the cell to hold hemoglobin so that they're more efficient at carrying oxygen. They'll have a lot of hemoglobin within their cell. Each individual hemoglobin is able to hold 4 oxygens. Each red blood cell can carry up to 1 billion oxygens from all of those red blood cells. Erythrocytes do lack mitochondria, so they're not able to do things like the electron transport chain. They're going to rely on glycolysis, anaerobic metabolism to make ATP. And they're produced when the human produces the hormone erythropoietin. So if the body starts to become deficient in oxygen, that'll trigger the hormone to be released, saying we need more red blood cells to carry more oxygen. That hormone erythropoietin then will stimulate the production of more erythrocytes so that you have more red blood cells to start carrying that oxygen. Next are our leukocytes, or our white blood cells. And you can see in this picture there's different kinds of white blood cells, but altogether they help fight infections. They do have slightly different jobs depending on if they're a basophil or an eosinophil or a neutrophil, but they all are helping fight infection. Some of them are phagocytic. Phagocytosis is something we talked about last semester, but that is how a cell eats. And what these cells are eating is microbes. They're eating an infection. So you stab yourself with a knife, some microbes from the knife, some bacteria from the knife get into your tissues. Those white blood cells are going to come and control that infection so that you don't, to minimize its effects on your body so that you are not harmed. There are somewhere between 5 and 10,000 white blood cells in a microliter of blood. And if their numbers are increased, that typically indicates an infection, that they are being produced at greater numbers and transported at greater numbers to fight the infection. They are able to leave the blood. If you remember, we talked about red blood cells stay within the blood, but white blood cells actually can squeeze between the cells of the endothelium to enter the tissues. They're able to leave the lymphatic system to get into the tissues, and that helps them fight infections in the tissues where the bacteria are. Okay, so why would a physician order a white cell count for a patient with symptoms of an infection? What do they have to do with each other? Here, this is the vessel here. So we're going to watch white blood cells going through here. And then there is a signal that there's an infection. And when there is that infection, your leukocytes are actually able to start clinging to the side here to slow down and enter the infected area instead of just whizzing right through.
Watch leukocytes roll along the inner surface of blood vessels in a small vein of a zebrafish, a transparent organism often used in cell biology research.
These are your white blood cells.
These leukocytes use a surface of glycoprotein known as L-selectin to attach to the vessel wall in the vicinity of an inflammation.
And you can see everything else is just
Notice how slowly the leukocytes
right
are moving
through.
relative to the erythrocytes that are passing by too rapidly to be seen clearly. Credit: Philippe Herbamel, Institut Pasteur, France.
Then our last thing we're going to talk about are platelets. Platelets are made from cells, but they technically are fragments of cells. They are pinched off fragments of a megakaryocyte. Thrombocytes is the word that means platelets. There are 250 to 400,000 platelets in a microliter of blood, and they're important in blood clotting and coagulation. So someone who's had a heart attack has a clot inside their vein or inside their artery made of blood cells. Or if you have cut yourself, maybe you cut yourself shaving and you started to bleed, it is those platelets that are going to come and stick together to form a clot to stop your blood from bleeding. Coagulation is a formation of a solid clot from liquid blood. So they're going to pull out of the liquid to form a solid clot. And that helps stop bleeding after an injury. That both reduces the blood loss and also reduces exposure to infection. If that area was opened up, infections could get right in. So we close it up so that they don't get in. To have platelets stick together, fibrinogen, which is one of those things that's in our plasma already that we're talking about, fibrinogen is going to be cut. And when it's cut, it's turned into fibrin. There are also clotting factors that are going to release a whole cascade of things. Prothrombin is going to be cleaved to thrombin. Fibrin and thrombin are going to help those platelets stick together, and you'll form a thrombus. A thrombus is a clot which will block a blood vessel. Kind of acts like you have just put a hole in the wall. Now you've put that paper and spackle and closed up that hole. When the clot is no longer needed, when the endothelium has repaired itself, the skin has repaired itself, you're back healing up, there are anti-clotting agents that will break up the fibrin, release the clot, and allow it to go be excreted from the body. So clots in arteries can cause heart attacks and strokes. So why would a hemophiliac is somebody who cannot clot their own blood. To treat them, we introduce clotting factors into their blood. Why would we be willing to introduce clotting factors into a hemophiliac when we know a clot could cause heart attacks and strokes? Okay, so then let's talk about some cardiovascular disease for your own health as for your ability to be an informed consumer of healthcare and to take care of your own health as an adult. Cardiovascular disease is a disorder of the heart and blood vessels. These can range from minor things, so a vein disturbance, to life-threatening disruptions of blood flow to the heart or brain. If blood is not flowing to the heart, you have a heart attack. If blood is not flowing to the brain, you have a stroke. Atherosclerosis is disease when fatty deposits build up within arteries. So here is a cross-section of an artery. This is the endothelium. This is the lumen. And this is plaque buildup here. along with that plaque, we have a thrombus forming here. So now instead of having all this area for blood to flow, we have this area for blood to flow. So blood flow is being released. Cholesterol can lead to atherosclerosis, especially a diet high in HDL. A diet that's high in LDL. We want our LDL levels to stay low and our HDL levels to stay high. So diet can increase LDL. Lack of exercise can increase LDL. Eating more healthy fats and exercising more can increase your HDL and reduce your risk of atherosclerosis. Inflammation can also affect cardiovascular disease risk. A heart attack is a myocardial infarction. If you've ever heard that word, myocardial infarction, that means a heart attack. That is when cardiac muscle is damaged or dying because there's a coronary artery that has been blocked and blood can't get through to that cardiac muscle. A stroke is a death of nervous tissue in the brain. Usually there's a blockage or rupture of arteries in the head. Angina pectoris is chest pain when a coronary artery is partially blocked. And that leads to chest pain called angina pectoris. If someone has an artery that has reduced flow to it, we can treat it with a stent surgically. So here is the artery that has had this buildup here, obstructing this artery. So we put in the stent and we blow it up like a balloon. And that stent will stay open. The balloon is taken out, the stent is open, and our blood flow is restored so that blood is able to return back to the heart or to the brain, depending on where you were placing that stent. Okay, we are going to come back in our next video and talk about oxygen and carbon dioxide, how they are transported through our blood and from the environment into ourselves. All right, I'll see you in a little bit. Bye.